Good evening. The Climate Secretary, Ed Miliband, says the sceptics shouldn't be taken seriously and what they're saying is dangerous. But after damaging scandals at East Anglia University and the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is it Mr Miliband's side who need to change their approach? He joins us live. Individual mistakes should not be allowed to undermine decades of research, according to the Climate Secretary, Ed Miliband. He says it would be devastating for future generations if the world doesn't continue trying to cut carbon emissions to stem global warming. It follows the row over how scientists behaved at East Anglia University and admissions that the UN's expert panel on climate change was wrong to claim the Himalayan glaciers would melt in 25 years. Carl Dinnan reports.
The glaciers are melting, and so, the sceptics say, is the credibility of the UN's main report on global warming. Revelations about shortcomings in this assessment are being used to pour cold water on climate change policy. Today, the Sunday Telegraph reported that one section on the state of glaciers in the Alps was only sourced from interviews with climbers in a mountaineering magazine and a student dissertation. Climate change researchers say that lack of rigour doesn't undermine the whole.
These are small isolated errors in a 3,000-word report. They do not affect the main basic findings. They are mainly about local impacts of climate change. And while any errors are, important to correct, let's not lose sight of the fact that the main robust findings still are valid.
But the head of the IPCC, Dr. Rajendra Pachauri, is under pressure. Yesterday it emerged that he had known about another problem with the report 2 months before it was corrected. That correction was made after it was discovered that a claim about Himalayan glaciers disappearing within 25 years was quite simply wrong. It was a mistake Dr. Pachauri initially seemed reluctant to explain.
I can't deal with it in 5 minutes. It's not an issue. You know that better than me. You can't deal with it in 5 minutes.
Those who question the solidity of the climate change consensus say the science is becoming too politicised.
I think what has happened is that it has been used slowly by politicians around the world as propaganda. And what has probably happened is that because they've started to come to a position where they feel that they are not under quite the scrutiny, you then tend to get a little bit of sloppiness coming in about the judgments in relation to the science.
The University of East Anglia's Climatic Research Unit had already unwittingly handed the sceptics some ammunition even before the IPCC did. A now infamous leaked email from their director read,
"I've just completed Mike's nature trick of adding in the real temperatures to each series for the last 20 years to hide the decline."
Of course, talk of using tricks to hide declines has been music to sceptical ears.
Hide the decline. Hide the decline.
As if the job of convincing the public to make sacrifices to combat climate change wasn't difficult enough.
And the Climate Secretary, Ed Miliband, joins us now from North London. Isn't it exactly the stifling of dissent that has got the climate scientists into this mess in the first place? Why are you going down this road again?
Oh, I'm not trying to stifle dissent, Krishnan. I think people are entitled to their point of view, but the judgment you've got to make is that when there's a mistake in Volume 2 of the 2007 IPCC report or other allegations that are made, does it undermine the basic facts about climate science, that the planet is warming, that the overwhelming majority view is that the responsibility of that is laid at the door of human-induced activity, essentially carbon dioxide emissions. So, and I don't think anything I've seen undermines that basic view. Indeed, it's actually a physical finding, a finding of physics, that more CO2 in the atmosphere, and there's more than there's been for 600,000 years, would heat up the planet, and that is indeed what's happening.
But you can't be 100% certain of that yourself, can you, that climate change is man-made? You can only be just about convinced.
Well, I don't think... I'm certainly more than just about convinced, because the overwhelming majority view of the scientists take the situation in the United Kingdom, the Royal Society, the Met Office, the National Institutes, all of those people tell me that they are as certain as scientists ever can be. And the question then is, do we say we're going to stick our head in the sands? Do we say we're going to take the easy way out? Or do we act? I might add that someone on your film said that somehow the politicians were using the science. The truth is that the politicians have taken too long to wake up to the science.
Yeah, but don't you need to show some... Don't you need to show some sort of respect to the sceptics, though? I mean, you know, saying they shouldn't be taken seriously, what they're saying is dangerous, suggests you think they're a bunch of nutters, when a lot of them are serious people. And you know, some of the recent revelations have shown less than serious goings-on in the established climate science unit.
And the IPCC needs to reform its practices so that the kind of mistakes that we saw in relation to the glacier don't happen again.
Should Mr. Pachauri keep his job?
Well, I think he should, because I think he should sort out and reform the problems that there have been and not walk away from them. So that's my view on that. But the truth is that why is this a binary choice? It's a binary choice because there are some people who say, let's just throw the science overboard. Let's throw away the overwhelming view and let's say that this thing doesn't really exist, or we don't really need to act, or there's an easy way out. Or do we say, well, actually, this is a very serious problem facing the world. This is something that is really going to profoundly affect the lives of future generations, and we do need to act. So you do have to sort of come down on one side or the other, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I think the science and the precautionary principle, which says that there's at the very least a huge risk if we don't act, mean that we should be acting.
But they turn the precautionary principle on its head, and they say there is a big risk from what you are advocating in terms of trying to cut carbon emissions, of stifling development, of keeping poor people in the developing world poor, and that actually, if you're going to apply the precautionary principle on science that isn't unproven, you should be doing the opposite of what you're doing.
Well, that's an extraordinary view to take, because the evidence that we do have suggests that the poorest people in the world are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. So we could take that view and we could decide not to act. And then we would find that poor people in Bangladesh, in the Maldives, where the Maldives thinks that it's going to lose its whole nation, are profoundly affected by our failure to act. So that's why I don't take that view, and that's why I think that view is irresponsible.
Just lastly, there's recently obviously been controversy around the release of documents in this country from East Anglia University and the freedom of information laws. Do you now believe that all those documents should be released and put into the public domain so they can be debated by all sides? And would you also apply that to all the information at the Met Office? I mean, we don't know what requests they've had under freedom of information, but one assumes they've equally been bombarded by climate change sceptics for information as well.
Absolutely. All the data should be put out there. And actually, the Met Office have acted to get some of the data from East Anglia out, because I think the people who believe that climate change is real and is happening have nothing to fear from openness and transparency. And that is a very, very important lesson that we need to learn. But it's a lesson we need to learn, but we mustn't lose sight of the big picture in this, which is that if we fail to act, there will be profound consequences, by the way, not just for our environment, but for our economy as well, because part of acting on climate change is about the gains we can make economically as well.
And Phil Jones at East Anglia should also keep his job, should he? In your view?
Look, there's an inquiry. Phil Jones has stepped down while the inquiry by Muir Russell takes place. Let's see what the inquiry turns up, and then let's make a judgment about those issues.
Ed Miliband, many thanks for joining us.